Welcome to Aaron Mahnke's Cabinet of Curiosities, a production of iHeartRadio and Grim and Mild.
Our world is full of the unexplainable. And if history is an open book, all of these amazing tales are right there on display, just waiting for us to explore. Welcome to the Cabinet of Curiosities. For decades now, the Eurovision Song Contest has reigned supreme as the single greatest event for fans of international pop music. Each year, participating countries select a single act and song to represent them for the grand prize. It's one part Battle of the Bands, one part Olympics, and it's gained a reputation for a spirit of no-holds-barred goofiness. Musicians perform elaborate dances while dressed as everything from insects and astronauts to flight attendants and fantasy creatures. But while the spirit of fun is palpable, the contest is serious business. Eurovision can make or break artists, catapulting them on a trajectory to either superstardom or obscurity. And in 1974, one competition piece made history in a way that no one saw coming. The song was called And After the Farewell, performed by the Portuguese artist Paulo de Carvalho. His music was light, innocent, optimistic, and upbeat, qualities that helped it strike a chord with the Portuguese people, not because their lives were all sunshine and roses, but because they weren't. For the previous 4 decades, Portugal had struggled under the thumb of an authoritarian dictatorship. Any dissent against the government was illegal, and citizens lived in constant fear of the secret police. In this tense atmosphere, Carvalho's music offered an escape from the tension of everyday life. After winning a national music festival in March of 1974, And After the Farewell was chosen to represent Portugal at Eurovision, which took place 1 month later on April 6th. 17 groups took the stage, with Carvalho performing as the penultimate act. Finally, everyone had received their scores, and the winner was Sweden. The up-and-coming pop group, a little band you might have heard of called ABBA, blew everyone away with their song Waterloo. The win propelled them to international fame, making ABBA one of the biggest success stories to ever come out of Eurovision. Meanwhile, Portugal had done about as poorly as possible. Carvalho's song garnered only 3 of 12 available points and ended up tying for last place. It was an embarrassing defeat, but the song and the country were getting ready for a reprise. A few weeks after the Eurovision finale, on April 24th at 10:55 p.m., And After the Farewell played on a Portuguese radio station. It seemed perfectly innocuous, but for a few people in the know, it was a moment of incomparable significance. You see, a group of military officers who opposed the authoritarian government had selected the song as a secret signal, a way of letting their members know that the time for action had arrived. As Carvalho's voice soared over the airwaves, they mobilized their troops in the first steps of a military coup. 2 hours later, a second song gave them the go-ahead to march. The officers quickly moved to seize significant buildings around the capital city of Lisbon. Realizing that the revolution had begun, the Portuguese people took to the streets and joined the soldiers. They congregated around a large flower market which was overflowing with seasonal carnations. The citizens grabbed the flowers by the armfuls, pinning them to lapels of revolutionaries and stuffing them down the barrels of their rifles. Within hours, the government had collapsed. 5 young men were killed and dozens of civilians were injured in a skirmish with the secret police, but otherwise the revolution was mostly bloodless. A new day had dawned for the Portuguese people, who quickly moved to create a democratic government. Decades later, April 25th is a national holiday known as Freedom Day, and it's the perfect time to revisit the Eurovision song that sparked the revolution. It might surprise you to know that And After the Farewell doesn't have any overtly revolutionary lyrics. If it did, the censors never would have allowed it to be played over the radio. It's just a sweet, nostalgic song about a man mourning the end of a relationship with his girlfriend. He compares their short-lived relationship to a flower he once picked and remarks that love involves winning and losing. In 1974, Portugal learned that firsthand when they lost Eurovision, but won their freedom. If you spend your weekends making strawberry cheesecake or salted caramel creme brulees, you've heard of bain-marie. Even if you're more of a kitchen novice than a star baker, you've probably come across this baking technique. A bain-marie, which is French for Mary bath, is basically a double boiler. You fill a pot with water, bring it to a boil, and then place another pot on top with the ingredients you want to cook. This technique keeps the heat low and consistent, which is useful for baking with delicate ingredients like eggs. If you heat an egg too fast, it will scramble, and nobody likes scrambled soufflé. But a bain-marie isn't just a tool for extremely complicated sweet treats. Ever melted chocolate in a double boiler to dip strawberries? Well, then you've used a bain-marie. What you might not know is that the humble bain-marie isn't just a baker's tool. It's used in perfumery, soap making, and chemistry, and has its roots in an even more ancient practice, alchemy. So why is it called a Mary bath, and who on earth is Mary? The first mention of double boilers popped up around 400 BC. At this time, they weren't called bain-maries, of course, and were mostly used for cooking and healing. Ancient Greek physician Hippocrates, the guy who created the Hippocratic Oath, recorded it being used to make medicine in the 400s BCE. The Roman writer Cato the Elder actually left us a cheesecake recipe from the 100s BCE, in which he instructed the baker to put the batter into a jar and submerge it in a pot of boiling water. The term bain-marie traces its roots back to a technique used by alchemists. These were the precursors of modern-day chemists, who experimented with elements to find out more about how they worked. Rather than investigating the secrets of the universe, though, most alchemists were more concerned with transmuting one type of element into another. Most notably, as you've probably heard, they were looking to find a way to convert other metals into valuable gold. Around 300 CE, an alchemist named Zosimos of Panopolis published a book listing the accomplishments of earlier alchemists. One of these was a Jewish woman named Miriam, who Zosimos referred to as Mary, or the Divine Maria. According to Zosimos, this Mary lived sometime between the year 1 and 200 CE in Egypt. She had a brilliant mind, creating several devices to distill, purify, and attempt to change various metals and elements. And one of these was the kerotachus. This was a special kind of double boiler that could withstand high temperatures. According to Zosimos, Mary actually used boiling mercury or sulfur in the bottom pot instead of water. This worked on the same principle, but it allowed her to heat the boiler high enough to actually melt copper and lead. So, as you would imagine, Mary's accomplishments ended up taking on a mythic air. Stories about her kerotachus and other inventions were retold by Roman, Arabic, and Persian alchemists and philosophers. Some of them believe that she was a tutor to the Greek philosophers, a Coptic Christian woman, even Miriam, the sister of Moses in the Bible, or many other options. But it wouldn't be until the 1200s when a Catalan doctor first referred to a double boiler with the Latin term balneum Mariae, or Mary's bath. Of course, he was referring to Mary from Zosimos' writings. This term spread through countries and languages around the Mediterranean until by the 1600s, most people used the French term bain-marie. Cooks and bakers, realizing the water baths that they used for soufflés and custards were similar, began calling that technique a bain-marie as well. Unfortunately, not much else is known about the ancient Mary who helps us make creme brulees today. In fact, it may be possible that she was a literary device and not a real alchemist at all. Alchemy was a very secretive practice, with many alchemists not wanting others to discover their secrets. In addition, it mixed chemistry with mysticism, attributing results as much to science as it did to devils and divine intervention. As a result, Zosimos and other alchemists often covered everything they wrote in layers of symbolism. And because of that, we don't have an answer to our question. Mary may have been a symbolic figure, or she was a real alchemist. We still don't know. But it's absolutely possible that there was a Jewish Miriam out there making scientific breakthroughs in the early 100s CE. At that time, there was a huge Jewish population in Alexandria. Some women there even practiced alchemy. In fact, Zosimos' sister was also an accomplished alchemist. Either way, give Mary your thanks the next time you make the perfect soufflé. I hope you've enjoyed today's guided tour of the Cabinet of Curiosities. Subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts or learn more about the show by visiting curiositiespodcast.com. This show was created by me, Aaron Mahnke, in partnership with How Stuff Works. I make another award-winning show called Lore, which is a podcast, book series, and television show. And you can learn all about it over at theworldoflore.com. And until next time, stay curious.